We got some cage matches that we're watching here from Madison Square Garden. Coming up next is Rowdy Piper and Ravishing Rick Rude. After that, Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man. Then Randy Savage and Ted DiBiase. And then Bruno and Tito against Randy Savage and Adrian Adonis. And then Hulk Hogan and the magnificent Don Morocco.
Wow.
I hate to tell you this, Tony, but I will be calling an audible.
Oh, you will.
Don't think we're going to watch 92 of these motherfuckers.
Okay. The audible when we say, we've had enough. We give. We tap.
I think what we're going to do is we're going to finish Hogan Boss Man because at least to you and I, this is our main event. Can we agree?
I think we can.
So after this one, it's going to be Roddy Piper and Rick Rude. That is their Christmas MSG show. It's December 28th, 1989.
Right.
And then after that, March 18th, 1989, just a few days before WrestleMania 5, Hulk Hogan versus the Big Boss Man. Super fun.
Tony Schiavone's first foray into Madison Square Garden. When people ask me what's the one match I remember more than any, that is the one match I remember more than any throughout my career. And it's not just like any other match. It's not the best match I've seen.
No, of course not.
But because it was my first time in Madison Square Garden.
It's memorable.
It's memorable because I came from Crockett Promotions, which again is a mom and pop's organization. Look at Sherry in there.
She earned her money, man.
Well, she did, man. But no, being in Madison Square Garden for the first time and knowing that we're going to get on a flight and fly to Boston Garden to do a night show, to me, I was just like, wow, I have made the big time. In reality, I had at that time.
Well, there you go. Look at there. Macho King falls to the bottom. He is going to somehow, some way upset the Ultimate Warrior here. But that leaves Warrior in the cage along with Sensational Sherry. Great stuff. Of course, our main event we're talking about, the match after what's to follow here, went down March 18th, 1989. You've heard Tony tell the story many, many times. It was a matinee show.
Yep.
20,000 fans were there. It was a sellout. If you're watching along with us, Roddy Piper is now making his way to the ring. Ravishing Rick Rude is already inside the cage waiting on him. But this show featured the next one we're going to be talking about. Tony Schiavone and Lord Alfred Hayes on commentary. We'd have Lanny Poffo reading a poem about WrestleMania 5, where he would praise the WWF World Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion Randy Savage and say that he's going to beat Hulk Hogan. And then Poffo leaves the ring, opting to not throw his trademark frisbee into the crowd. And they would be recording some matches here for Primetime Wrestling that would air in April of 89. So you see Roma and Jim Powers beating the Conquistadors, even though Tony acted like he'd never seen them before last week. You've got the women's champion, Rockin' Robin, pinning Judy Martin.
Wow.
Then we've got Mr. Perfect working with Ron Garvin, a fellow who had just been the NWA World Champion with you down at JCP. And then kind of in the middle of the card, Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man working with Slick at the time, have their steel cage match that goes 11 minutes and 14 seconds. But after that, it's the Rockers versus Arn and Tully, which is a big-time match anywhere in the world. But in Madison Square Garden, dude, sign me up.
Yeah.
Rick Rude, and I'm sorry, not Rick Rude. The Red Rooster, rather, would be working with the Brooklyn Brawler, and they get plenty of time on that one. Hercules Hernandez would work Bad News Brown, and they go to a double countout. Jim Duggan's going to team up with the Bushwhackers to take on Dino Bravo, Jacques, and Raymond Rougeau. And believe it or not, they go 15 minutes in the last match.
Yikes.
But Hulk Hogan was in the middle because, well, we needed to get him to the next town because that same day they ran a matinee show in Spokane, Washington. The main event was Jake Roberts versus Andre the Giant. Underneath, we had Big John Studd and Akeem, Ted DiBiase and Tito Santana, Bret Hart and the Honky Tonk Man, the Blue Blazer and Ron Bass, Sam Houston and Danny Davis. And I guess I am used to be related to Scott Casey and Barry Horowitz. I guess Megan's mom's sister was married to Scott Casey once.
Okay.
Which I did not know until not that long ago. There's also a matinee show that same day in Columbus, Ohio. So far we've had 3 matinees, guys. We had the A show at the Madison Square Garden event, 20,000 sold out. We also had a B show in Spokane, Washington. And I guess we'd call this a C show, but it's not really, because in Columbus, Ohio, they got Rick Martel, King Haku, Brutus Beefcake, Rick Rude, Demolition and the Powers of Pain, and Randy Savage, who is the world champion, versus the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior. So title versus title in Columbus is a big time matinee. And they would do it again that night in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Riverfront Coliseum. Once again, it's Beefcake and Rude. It's Martel and Haku. It's Neidhart and Valentine. But the world title versus the Intercontinental title, Savage versus Warrior. But what you were more interested in, what you were working that day, was the A show. After televising the matinee show on the MSG network with Lord Alfred Hayes, it's going to be you and Lord Alfred Hayes doing your thing at night in the Boston Gardens. This is going to be on the NESN network, which I think stands for Northeast Sports Network. And there's 15,200 fans there. And famously, once again, we've got some of those same matches. Hercules and Bad News Brown, Duggan and the Bushwhackers against Dino Bravo and the Rougeau brothers. But the main event, and it went on last here, is Hogan and Bossman once again in a steel cage. And what's really fascinating to me, and again, I haven't seen this match in a long time, and we're going to watch it next here, but I think they did the big suplex spot off the top of the cage.
They did. Yeah.
And the idea that we're doing that in these, for lack of a better words, damn concrete rings here.
Right.
That's a big fella to come off the top of a cage with a big superplex and to do it twice in the same day.
Okay. They did not do it in Boston.
Good. Thank goodness.
They only did it in Madison Square Garden. I remember talking to Bruce about this when they did it. The only other time they did it was on Saturday night's main event.
Okay.
And Bruce said, he said, when you have a spot like that, you only do it in like Madison Square Garden, or if you're on Saturday night's main event, you don't do it anywhere else.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But Dusty was on that card too in the Boston Garden. Was he on this card in MSG? I remember him being on the Boston Garden card. Or maybe it was another time.
I think you're mistaken. He's not on either one of those.
Okay, so it was because I did the Boston Garden again, and he was on the Boston Garden card later. That's what it was.
Let me see when he shows up, though, because I know that he started. Okay, so the vignettes for him started in May of '89.
Okay,
and he'd come back in Montreal. Believe it or not, they brought him back in Montreal at the Forum. The main event that night was Savage and Hogan. Underneath was Demolition against Bossman and Akeem. Bravo and Hercules. Dusty Rhodes versus Ted DiBiase. The rest of that card is Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect, the Warlord and Jim Neidhart, Paul Roma and Boris Zukov, and Tim Horner and Barry Horowitz. 12,000 fans are there.
Wow.
That's pretty cool that they brought Dusty back to the company after all that time in Montreal freaking all.
Isn't that something?
But he would be in Boston Gardens, and you're exactly right. This would be the final Boston Garden show ever televised on NESN. It was June 3rd, 1989. Once again, it was you and Lord Alfred Hayes.
Right.
You started with Horner over Horowitz, and then Warlord over Neidhart, and then Dusty Rhodes over Ted DiBiase. So, yeah, you were right. You nailed it, but it was a little later. I find it interesting that we do see Rick Rude bleeding in the big blue cage.
Right.
But they're showing it. But what they're not showing is he's wrestling with his asshole hung out.
No, they've got that phased out.
This is the first wrestler you remember making the asshole exposure a regular part of the repertoire. Was that Flair, and then everybody sort of followed suit? Or who's the innovator of let's show the world my asshole?
It was Flair.
Okay.
For me, yeah.
Now, we've always heard that Flair can show people that he is an asshole.
Right. He's shown that many times.
But to show shoot hole.
Shoot hole. Yeah, it's a different thing. Right.
Yeah. Not working hole, but shoot hole.
Yeah.